The first thing you need to do as a user in Jenkins usually is to create a job to automate your application's testing and building workflow. So for example, in this case, we have a Java Maven application, which has 2 tests. It's a simplistic application, and we want to run those tests and build a jar file from that application, and we want to create a job for that on Jenkins. So this job needs to run Maven commands. Maven test, which will run the test, and Maven package, which will create the jar file. So this means that we need Maven commands to be available in our job or in the whole Jenkins for different jobs. As a second example, let's say we also have a JavaScript, a Node application that we also want to run tests on and then package it and maybe push to Nexus repository. In order to execute the tests, we will need npm to be available on Jenkins so that we can run npm test and then npm pack, etc. So depending on what application you're building and what build tools or package manager tools their application needs, you have to have those tools configured and installed on Jenkins. So there are 2 ways to configure those tools in Jenkins. One is the easier way, which is through plugins. We just install a plugin of the tool that we need, for example, Node.js or Docker or whatever, and then we can use it in Jenkins. The second one is to install those tools directly on the server. So from the command line, enter the server where Jenkins is running. In this case, it's not going to be the droplet that is running Jenkins container, but the container itself. So inside the container, install those tools so that we can execute commands of those tools in the Jenkins jobs. And we're going to see both of them. First of all, let's configure a plugin for Maven. So most of these tools are already there through plugins, so we don't have to install any plugins. And there is a place where we can manage all those tools in one place. In the tool configuration, this is where we can configure all those build tools and package manager tools, etc. So if we go inside, here you see configuration of different tools. We have Git, we have JDK, and here we have Gradle and Maven. These are all for Java applications. And by managing these tools or configuring these tools, I mean deciding which version of the respective tool you need and also making them available in your jobs. So let's start with Maven. If we click Add Maven, here you see a little section. We can give it a name. Let's say Maven version 3.9. This is the latest one here, as you see. So this will install and download Maven, this version, and then we will have Maven command available in our jobs. Alternative to installing it directly from internet is we can see another installer here is running a shell command where we can write the actual command for downloading Maven, or batch command, depending whether it's a Windows or Linux server where Jenkins is running. But in this case, we're downloading it straight from Apache, which is more convenient. And I'm gonna save this. So now we should have Maven commands available in the whole Jenkins. So whatever job I create, I should have Maven available. And here now you see that I have a list of Maven's installations because I have configured one. And we're going to be using Maven when we create our first simple job. As an alternative, as I said, we can also install a tool directly on the server where Jenkins is running. And if we go back to Manage Jenkins, here we don't have Node.js or NPM available. And if we go to plugins and search for Node.js, we have a plugin with Node.js. However, we need NPM as well. So instead of installing it through the plugin, we're gonna install it on the server. So let's go and do that. So in this part, we're gonna be installing npm and node in the container, inside the container where Jenkins is running, so that we can have both of these tools available as commands in our jobs in the whole Jenkins. So let's do that. So first thing is that we need to enter the Docker container in order to install those tools. So I'm going to do docker ps. Here I have my container ID. And this is an important part here. We're going to enter the container as a root user, because you saw that by default, this container is running as a Jenkins user, which is a good practice because Jenkins application is managed by Jenkins user itself. However, we need permission to install applications inside, which means administrative privileges. So instead of entering as a Jenkins user, we're going to enter as root user. And we can do that pretty simply by adding flag user and 0. So this will be for root user. And if I execute this, here you see I am a root user inside the container. So with this addition, you can enter any container as a root user to download stuff, make changes, etc. When you install a tool, maybe you also want to look up what distribution of Linux your server is running, right? So that you can find a respective installation guide for that tool for that specific distribution. So we can do that by checking /etc/issue. So this is the Linux distribution. So in this case, you would need node and npm installation guide for Debian. So I'm going to do apt update. I'm going to install curl. Let's see if curl is available already. It is not. So I'm going to install curl. And using curl, I'm going to download a script from this address that will have all the commands to install Node.js and npm. So if I do ls, here's the script, and now we're going to execute that script, installing Node.js. So if I do node here, the command is not available yet because we need to do apt install Node.js. And now Node.js and npm will actually be downloaded. The latest version, so if we do node -v, we have the latest version installed. And npm -v, we have npm installed as well. So both of these tools are available inside Jenkins, so we can use those in our jobs. So these are the two alternatives. We're going to see both of those used in action when we create our first job.